This is HFY Vanguard, where seduction turns to destiny and one night changes the fate of worlds. The legend begins now. The council chamber of the Astrian Confederation was a cathedral of cold geometry, polished obsidian walls rising like blades light, slashing across metal floors in sterile precision. Beneath that merciless glow stood Ambassador Nyla Rix, her violet skin gleaming faintly, her posture flawless, her expression unreadable. Every word spoken in that chamber could start or end a civilization. She had learned long ago to let silence do most of the speaking. Before her, 7 council elders sat upon their elevated dais, identical in their tailored graphite robes with orange insignias that pulsed faintly like the veins of a machine. They looked down on her as if she were a finely engineered tool, useful but replaceable. Elder Krath's voice broke the stillness. "Ambassador Rix, you are aware of the gravity of your next assignment?" "I am, Elder," she replied, her tone smooth, professional. "Humanity has become problematic." "Problematic," another Elder Vorax echoed with disdain. "They expand through the Orion arm like fire in dry forest. Reckless, chaotic. They disrupt mining routes and ignore trade protocols. Their aggression cannot continue." Nyla kept her gaze level. "Then diplomacy is required." "Precisely," Krath said, folding his long fingers together. "You will serve as our first permanent envoy to Earth, but your methods must be unconventional." A faint ripple of unease crossed her spine. Define unconventional. The oldest among them, Elder Krath, leaned forward. "Our intelligence suggests human males are particularly susceptible to emotional and biological persuasion. Commander Jackson Reed is their primary military liaison. You will cultivate his trust, his confidence, his desire." The words struck like static. Desire. "You want me to seduce him?" Krath's pale eyes flashed. "We ask that you do what must be done. If charm achieves what treaties cannot, so be it. Influence him. Redirect their expansion away from Astrian territories. Use any means necessary." Nyla's throat tightened. She had negotiated ceasefires between warring planets, spoken before empires, and bent stubborn leaders without ever crossing that line. She was a diplomat, not a courtesan, yet refusing an elder's directive was unthinkable. Elder Vorax's tone softened, almost kind. "Your record is impeccable, Ambassador. You have become whatever an alien culture required warrior scholar saint. Humanity will be no different." From the side table, Medical Officer Neff stepped forward, his silver tablet projecting biochemical charts. "Ambassador Rix has received the standard diplomatic immunization package, including contraceptive measures. Cross-species conception remains theoretically impossible." The assurance hung like a disclaimer before a dangerous experiment. Nyla inclined her head. "Understood." Krath nodded once. "The diplomatic vessel Celestial Harmony departs within the hour. You will have 3 Earth months to achieve measurable results. Failure will not be tolerated." The phrase carried a quiet, lethal weight. She bowed with perfect form and turned on her heel. The massive doors sealed behind her with a hiss that felt like exile. The corridors of the Astrian capital stretched in immaculate silver arcs, humming with light from energy conduits embedded beneath translucent floors. Nyla's reflection followed her, an elegant silhouette moving through a civilization that prized order above compassion. Her assistant Kel hurried beside her, carrying a data slate. "The Harmony is prepped for departure, Ambassador," he said, breathless. "I've uploaded human cultural databases, language etiquette, social psychology, mating customs." "Of course you have," she murmured, scanning the glowing interface. Hollow images of Earth spun before her, blue oceans, cloud-wrapped continents, glittering cities. Primitive yet beautiful. "What do we know of Commander Reed?" Kel scrolled quickly. "Age 38 Earth years. Former military strategist turned liaison. Decorated for valor during the Titan Rebellion. Known for integrity, directness, resistance to manipulation. Unmarried." Nyla arched an eyebrow. "So the council sends me to deceive a man who despises deceit. How poetic." Kel hesitated. "They believe your natural assets will overcome such obstacles." Her lips curved, not in amusement, but in bitterness. They always do. As they reached the embarkation platform, the sleek silver hull of the Celestial Harmony shimmered beneath the twin suns. It looked less like a ship and more like a blade poised to pierce the void. Crew members bowed as she boarded, their motions synchronized in Astrian precision. Within her private cabin, Nyla stood before the mirror. Violet light from the planet's skyline reflected across her metallic hair and flawless skin. Her diplomatic attire, form-fitting but dignified, was designed to project authority with just enough allure. She examined herself as though studying a weapon. Computer, she said softly, display human female attractiveness parameters. Holographic figures appeared smiling, laughing, expressive. So much emotion unfiltered. Nyla tilted her head. They wear their hearts on their faces, she whispered. No wonder the council fears them. The ship's AI announced departure. As the engines ignited, a subtle vibration thrummed through the floor. Stars stretched into streaks. The Astrian capital dwindled to a glimmer. Nyla sat by the viewport, watching the cosmos unfold. For the first time in many cycles, doubt crept into her disciplined mind. Humans are reckless, she told herself. Impulsive. Dangerous. But another voice whispered beneath, or perhaps they are simply free. She dismissed the thought and opened the briefing again. Every human behavior, every weakness, cataloged like prey analysis. Yet the image of Commander Reed drew her gaze repeatedly. Those steady blue eyes, the faint gray at his temples, the aura of someone who had seen death and refused to bend. Her pulse quickened. Not attraction, she assured herself. Curiosity, tactical interest. Hours melted into light years. The Harmony cruised through silent corridors of space, and Nyla buried herself in preparation. She studied human literature, Shakespeare, Orwell, Angelo, trying to decode what drove such volatile minds. Their art seemed to thrive on contradiction, love born from pain, beauty in chaos. It fascinated and unnerved her. At one point, she asked the AI, why do humans create art about their own flaws? The synthesized voice replied, perhaps, Ambassador, because they do not fear imperfection. The answer lingered. When sleep finally claimed her dreams tangled with memory, the council's cold stares blurred into the imagined warmth of human eyes. Somewhere between duty and desire, something began to shift. 3 days later, the Harmony approached a swirl of blue and white earth. Compared to Astria's ordered skylines, it looked untamed, alive. Lightning flickered through clouds, oceans roared beneath. Nyla felt a strange, stirring anticipation, almost excitement. Ambassador Kell's voice came through the intercom. We're entering orbit. The human diplomatic corps has confirmed reception. Understood, she replied, straightening her uniform. Her reflection in the mirror met her gaze, proud but uncertain. This is just another mission, she told herself aloud. Charm the human, influence policy, return home. But the words rang hollow. Somewhere in the silence between the stars, a faint intuition whispered that nothing about this mission would go according to plan. The ship descended through atmosphere, fire streaking across the hull as Earth's gravity embraced her. Below, continents glowed with city lights, rivers of gold weaving through darkness. Nyla placed her hand against the glass, watching a planet that pulsed like a living heart. Human, she whispered, show me why the universe fears you. The Celestial Harmony broke through the clouds, engines roaring like thunder. In that instant, caught between two worlds, Nyla Rix stopped being merely an envoy. She became the spark of a story neither species would ever forget. The Celestial Harmony pierced through the last layer of Earth's atmosphere like a blade slicing into silk. Flames of re-entry scattered across the hull, but within the diplomatic suite, Nyla Rix stood motionless before the viewport, watching the planet expand beneath her. Oceans shimmered like liquid sapphire. Sprawling cities pulsed with golden light. It was chaotic, unregulated, alive in a way Astria had forgotten how to be. Ambassador, the AI's calm voice announced, we have entered orbit. The United Earth Diplomatic Corps has granted clearance for docking at the Pacific Hub. Understood, Nyla replied. Her voice was steady, but her pulse had quickened. The mission was real now. The humans were no longer data files and simulations, they were waiting. The docking port of the United Earth Diplomatic Center gleamed in the morning light. Chrome walkways extended like veins over azure water, leading to a glass structure that caught the sun and shattered it into rainbows. For all their reputation as brash and crude humans built with unexpected elegance. Nyla descended the ramp with flawless poise. Two human security officers stood at attention, nervous but disciplined. A woman in a tailored Navy suit approached her stride, brisk and confident. Ambassador Ricks, she greeted, extending her hand. Welcome to Earth. I'm Diane Foster, Chief Liaison for Interstellar Relations. Nyla mirrored the gesture, her own fingers cooler and smoother than human skin. The honor is mine, Ms. Foster. The Astrian Confederation values this opportunity for dialogue. Cameras floated silently nearby, orb-like drones capturing every moment. Dozens of human eyes followed her from behind transparent barriers, curious and hungry. Nyla's heightened senses caught their accelerated heartbeats, the subtle dilation of pupils. Fascination tinged with attraction. She'd expected that. Still, the weight of their attention pressed against her like heat. You attract quite an audience, she remarked lightly. Foster smiled. Humans are curious by nature, Ambassador, and you're the first Astrian they've ever seen in person. Nyla inclined her head. Differences can be educational. The walk through the facility was a study in contrast, gleaming technology alongside living plants, holographic displays next to hand-painted murals. Humanity's refusal to choose between chaos and beauty intrigued her. They entered a wide elevator rising toward the reception hall. Commander Reed is waiting, Foster said. He's been briefed on Astrian customs, though I can't promise perfection. Nyla allowed herself a faint smile. Perfection is overrated. The elevator doors opened with a chime revealing a panoramic chamber filled with sunlight. Through the glass walls, the Pacific stretched endlessly beyond the city skyline. Clusters of diplomats mingled in tailored suits, their chatter subdued by the sight of her. And there by the large windows stood Commander Jackson Reed. He was taller than she'd expected. Shoulders broad beneath a dark uniform marked with the insignia of Earth Command. His hair was short black with threads of gray, and his stance radiated both discipline and quiet defiance. When his eyes, deep glacial blue, met hers, Nyla felt the faintest hitch in her breath. Foster stepped aside. Commander Reed, may I introduce Ambassador Nyla Ricks of the Astrian Confederation. Reed turned fully toward her and extended his hand. Ambassador, welcome to Earth. His voice was lower than she'd imagined, measured, confident, and utterly human. When she placed her hand in his, she noticed the warmth of his skin against her cooler temperature. The pleasure is mutual, Commander, she said smoothly. Your planet is vibrant. A faint smile ghosted across his lips. That's one way to describe it. As they shook hands, Nyla activated a subtle pheromonal pulse, a standard diplomatic courtesy among Astrians meant to enhance trust and ease tension. Normally it worked flawlessly, but this time something went wrong. Reed's pupils constricted. His breathing shifted. Then instead of relaxing, he took a step back, expression sharpening. I hope your journey was comfortable, he said politely, but there was new steel in his tone. He'd noticed. For the first time in years, Nyla faltered. Yes, she replied after a heartbeat, though your gravity takes some adjustment. Understandable, he said. Our medical team is available if you need assistance. The air between them crackled, not with tension she could manipulate, but with awareness she couldn't control. He had seen through her diplomatic artifice as easily as a blade through paper. Reed gestured toward a table lined with glasses. Would you care for a drink? I'm told your physiology is compatible with most of our beverages. She accepted, recalibrating. Thank you. I'm curious, your profile suggests extensive experience with non-terrestrial species. Some, he said, handing her a glass of clear water. But you're the first Astrian I've met. I find it's best to approach new cultures with openness rather than techniques. The emphasis was unmistakable. He knew exactly what she tried. Nyla met his gaze squarely. In Astrian culture, biochemical harmonization is a gesture of goodwill, not deceit. I believe you, he said simply. But if we're to work together, I prefer we rely on conversation, not chemistry. Something inside her, something she hadn't felt since her early training shifted. Not irritation, not humiliation. Respect. Agreed, Commander, she said quietly. Jackson, he corrected. If we're going to make progress, formality will only slow us down. Then you must call me Nyla, she replied. For the next hour they talked. What began as polite diplomacy evolved into genuine dialogue. They discussed trade, culture, art. Jackson's curiosity was sharp but never invasive, his humor dry and unexpected. Each time he challenged her assumptions, she found herself intrigued rather than offended. Her charm, so carefully crafted, so effective on countless worlds, seemed useless here. He wasn't immune to her beauty. She could see it in the subtle flicker of his eyes. But he didn't bend to it. He held his ground firm, yet respectful. When the meeting ended, he escorted her through the corridor to the suite prepared for her stay. The human guards saluted as they passed. Outside the door, he stopped. "The real work begins tomorrow," he said. "Then I look forward to it," she replied. He inclined his head. "Rest well, Ambassador." As he turned to leave, he paused. "Whatever your mission here truly is," his voice lowered, quiet but steady, "I hope you'll consider that honesty might accomplish more than any strategy you were instructed to use." Nyla froze. The words struck deeper than she expected. Before she could respond, he nodded once and walked away, leaving her alone in the hallway's golden light. Inside her quarters, Nyla sank into the nearest chair, exhaling slowly. The subtle tremor in her hands betrayed what she refused to admit. Aloud, he had disarmed her without lifting a weapon. Her training demanded analysis. What went wrong? Where did the influence fail? But another part of her, smaller and more human, whispered a different question. Why did it matter? She replayed their conversation in her mind. The warmth in his tone when he said her name. The way his eyes softened when she smiled genuinely, not strategically. The faint spark of humor that made her want to laugh, something she hadn't done outside rehearsed diplomacy in years. She stood and faced the mirror. "What are you doing, Nyla?" she whispered. Her reflection stared back, beautiful, flawless alien. "He's just another target." But even as she said it, the words tasted wrong. Later that night, she stood by the window, gazing at the city below. Earth's skyline pulsed with life, hovercraft weaving between glowing towers, neon signs reflecting off glass. Astria's cities were quieter, disciplined to the point of sterility. Here, everything felt chaotic, yet full of meaning. Perhaps that was what unnerved the council so much. Humans didn't just exist, they lived. A soft chime echoed from her wrist communicator. A message from the High Council. Report status within 48 hours. Immediate progress required. Nyla closed the channel. She wasn't ready, not yet. She turned back to the window, eyes finding the horizon. Somewhere out there, Jackson Reed was probably reviewing his notes, analyzing her the way she analyzed him. She imagined him leaning over a desk light, catching the edge of his jaw, eyes intense and thoughtful. For reasons she couldn't quantify, the image made her heart quicken. She placed her hand against the glass. "You're not supposed to get under my skin," she murmured. But deep down, she already knew it was too late. The grand hall of human achievements glittered like a starfield trapped beneath glass. Thousands of lights hung suspended from invisible wires, mimicking constellations of Earth's night sky. Music swelled from a live orchestra, rich, layered, deeply emotional. Nyla Rick stood near the balcony rail, her violet skin catching the reflection of 1,000 shifting stars. She had attended hundreds of galas on countless worlds. None felt like this. On Astria, such events were calculated performances, cold rituals of power and hierarchy. Here, laughter rang freely. Strangers toasted with crystal glasses. Even the air pulsed with life. "You look like you're trying to memorize every detail," said a voice beside her. She turned. Jackson Reed stood there in formal attire, black suit, crisp white shirt, the faint sheen of metals at his chest. The human uniform somehow made him look more dangerous, not less. "I'm studying," Nyla replied, a practiced smile forming. "Understanding a culture's celebrations often reveals more than its politics." He chuckled. "And what have you learned about ours?" "That humans are effervescent," she said, searching for the right word. "Chaotic energy wrapped in sincerity." "That's one of the nicer descriptions I've heard," he said, offering her a glass of golden liquid. "Champagne. Try it. Tradition demands it." She accepted, sniffing the bubbles that fizzed playfully against her nose. "Effervescent indeed," she murmured, before taking a cautious sip. Sweetness burst across her tongue, light and unpredictable, like the man watching her reaction with quiet amusement. "You like it," he observed. "I didn't say that." "You didn't have to." Nyla felt a flicker of warmth rise in her cheeks. She wasn't used to being the one read so easily. The orchestra changed tempo, the crowd shifting as couples began to gather at the center of the hall. Jackson extended his hand. "Would you dance with me?" Nyla hesitated. Her mission parameters encouraged cultivating intimacy, but after the failed pheromone attempt, she'd sworn to tread carefully. Yet curiosity and something deeper pushed her forward. "I should warn you," she said, taking his hand. "I've only studied the theory." He smiled. "Then we'll improvise." He led her into the swirling crowd. His hand rested lightly at her waist, warm, steady, commanding, without force. The music's rhythm vibrated through the floor, guiding their steps. "1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, he murmured. "I know the count," she said, trying not to sound breathless. He laughed softly. "Then stop counting. Just move." She did. And for a moment, everything else, her orders, the council, the looming politics, faded into the sound of music and the feel of his hand guiding hers. "You're a fast learner," he said as they turned effortlessly across the marble floor. "I adapt quickly," she replied. "It's my function." "That's a shame." She frowned. "A shame, because you make it sound mechanical. But what I'm seeing looks a lot like joy." The words disarmed her more than any strategic question ever could. She looked up at him, caught between deflection and truth. "You assume aliens experience joy the same way humans do." "Maybe not," he said quietly, eyes never leaving hers. "But whatever that is on your face, it suits you." For the first time in years, Nyla laughed. Not a polite chuckle, not a diplomatic echo, but something real. Around them, whispers rippled. Cameras turned. The sight of the violet-skinned ambassador and the human commander dancing together sent gossip through every embassy network. But Nyla didn't care. For those few minutes, she wasn't an envoy. She was simply alive. When the song ended, applause echoed. Jackson released her slowly, reluctant to break the moment. "You're better at this than you let on," she said, her voice softer now. "Good partners make each other look good," he replied. "That's true in politics, too." Her smile faded slightly, replaced by the reminder of why she was here. "Speaking of politics, why do you think your government truly accepted Austrian diplomacy now?" He considered. "We don't trust easily, but we value knowledge and we'd rather talk than fight. Most of the time." "Most," she teased. He smirked. "We're still human." Something about that answer, self-aware yet unapologetic, fascinated her. The council had described humans as impulsive brutes with fragile egos, but the man before her was composed, deliberate, and utterly unpredictable. Halfway through the evening, a vibration pulsed against her wrist, an encrypted message. The council. Nyla excused herself and slipped into a quiet alcove beneath the mezzanine. The hologram flickered to life, Elder Krath's sharp features materializing in midair. "Ambassador Rix, your progress report is overdue." "I was attending a diplomatic event," she replied evenly. "Relations are proceeding cautiously." Cautiously, Krath's tone sliced like ice. "We did not send you to Earth to enjoy their festivities. We require influence, not cordiality. You have 3 months to redirect human expansion. No more delays." "Commander Reed is perceptive," she said carefully. "Direct manipulation risks exposure." "Then find indirect methods," Krath snapped. "Your predecessor failed in hesitation. Do not repeat his error." Her chest tightened. "Understood, Elder." The hologram vanished, leaving behind a faint crackle of static and the ghost of his disapproval. For the first time, the weight of the Confederation felt suffocating. She exhaled and turned back toward the hall and froze. Jackson was there, standing a few meters away, watching her. His expression was unreadable, but those eyes held questions. "Everything all right?" he asked. "Routine communication," she said smoothly. "My superiors are impatient." "Sounds familiar," he replied dryly. "Earth Command has its share of bureaucrats too." But there was concern in his voice, a quiet empathy that unsettled her even more than suspicion. "They're pressuring you, aren't they?" he asked. She hesitated. Lying felt wrong, but truth was forbidden. "Let's just say expectations are high." He nodded slowly. "Then maybe you should take a break from expectations. Come with me." He led her through a side corridor into an exhibition wing. The hall was lined with human art paintings, sculptures, holographic installations that shimmered like living light. Nyla stopped before a massive canvas depicting 2 hands, one human, one alien, reaching toward each other but not quite touching. The colors were raw, imperfect, alive. Humans express emotion openly, she said softly. On Astria, such displays would be considered undisciplined. Is that why you keep yourself so controlled? Jackson asked. Her head turned sharply. Excuse me? Even when something fascinates you, you hide it. You think it makes you stronger. That's what I was taught. And what do you believe? He asked quietly. No one had ever asked her that, not the council, not any colleague. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then, almost to her own surprise, she whispered, I don't know. Jackson smiled faintly. Maybe that's the beginning of diplomacy, learning what you actually believe. His words hit her harder than any order from the council ever had. They stripped away the layers of training and left her raw seen, vulnerable, human. They moved from one exhibit to another, and each time their shoulders brushed, something electric passed between them. By the time they reached the final chamber, the silence between them was thick and with unspoken truth. Commander, she began, but he stopped her with a raised hand. Jackson, he corrected again, his voice low. When we're alone. She nodded. Jackson. Her heart stuttered at how easily the name fit on her tongue. Later, as she lay in her quarters staring at the ceiling, the evening replayed in fragments, the dance, the art, the questions that had peeled back her defenses. She should have been analyzing his weaknesses, cataloging responses. Instead, she found herself remembering how it felt when he smiled at her like she was more than a mission. Her wrist communicator blinked again, another message from the council demanding measurable progress. Nyla turned it off. For the first time in 15 cycles of service, she ignored a direct order. She touched the pendant at her throat, a simple Astrian crystal that pulsed faintly with her heartbeat. You wanted me to seduce him, she whispered. But I think you've underestimated who's seducing who. Beyond the glass walls, dawn began to rise over the Pacific, turning the sky gold. Somewhere in the city below, a human commander was awake, probably questioning her motives, even as he replayed the same memories she did. For the first time, Nyla understood the true danger of this assignment. It wasn't failure, it was feeling. The diplomatic compound's garden was quiet that morning, bathed in the pale gold of early sunlight. Earth's air felt heavier than Astria's, thick with humidity, and sent the sweetness of flowers, the sharp bite of soil, the faint hum of unseen life. Nyla walked slowly along the stone path, every movement deliberate. Her orders still echoed in her head like chains. Influence him. Redirect expansion. Use any means necessary. But every time she pictured Jackson Reed's face, the honesty in his eyes, the warmth in his laughter, the words lost their power. He was waiting for her by the reflecting pool, hands clasped behind his back, his posture rigid yet calm. The water mirrored the morning sky, fractured only by the occasional ripple of wind. Good morning, Ambassador, he said, turning toward her. Good morning, Commander. A pause. A careful, deliberate silence hung between them. I hope you enjoyed last night's reception, he said, gesturing toward the benches beneath the trees. It was educational, Nyla replied. She took a seat across from him, smoothing the folds of her diplomatic uniform. Your people have created remarkable art, unrestrained, emotional. That's one word for it. Jackson sat opposite her, leaning forward slightly. I've always believed art tells the truth about its creators, what they value, what they fear. He studied her face. What truths would Astrian art reveal, and I wonder? She hesitated. It wasn't the kind of question one asked in a political meeting. It was personal disarming. Order, she said finally, precision, control. We value symmetry, predictability. Passion is seen as weakness. Do you believe that? Nyla met his gaze. I was taught to. He nodded slowly as if confirming something he had already guessed. Then maybe that's what makes us different. Humans survive by chaos, you survive by control. But both of us fear the same thing, losing it. The truth in his words hit her like a pulse. She looked away toward the reflection of the sky on the water. You speak like someone who studied diplomacy. I've studied people, Jackson said quietly, especially people who come with hidden agendas. Her eyes snapped back to him. What do you imply? I'm not implying. He reached into his jacket and withdrew a small hollow device. The projection flickered to life above his hand, encrypted Astrian data, intercepted transmissions. Her blood went cold. Our intelligence team decoded these last night, he said. Messages between your High Council and the Astrian Mining Guild. They mention you by name. Her chest tightened. You're spying on me. I'm protecting my planet. His tone was calm, almost too calm. Tell me, Nyla, were you ever here for peace? Or was it always manipulation dressed as diplomacy? The words struck like a blade, but what hurt more was the disappointment in his voice. I see, she said quietly. You think everything I've done was deceit, wasn't it? She rose to her feet, her composure fracturing at the edges. You have no idea the pressure I'm under. The council sent me here with orders, yes, but I didn't ask for this mission. Then why take it? Because refusing them isn't an option. Her voice cracked. You think your politicians are ruthless, and Commander? Try serving under a government that sees empathy as a flaw. He stood too, eyes searching hers. Then why are you still serving them? The question sliced through her defenses. For a moment, she couldn't breathe. I don't know, she whispered. Maybe because it's all I've ever known. Silence fell, filled only by the faint rustle of leaves. Finally, she looked up, the light catching in her green eyes. You deserve the truth. I was sent here to influence you through charm, through manipulation, through whatever means would ensure Astrian interests. Jackson didn't flinch, including seduction. She exhaled sharply, shame burning through her. Yes, including that. For a moment, neither spoke. Then he asked softly, and now? Now, she struggled for words. Now I don't know what I'm doing anymore. You were supposed to be predictable commander. A man led by instinct. But you, her voice faltered. You saw through everything. You treated me like an equal. No one ever has. He studied her face, the raw honesty there. And the council doesn't know you're saying this. Of course not. Jackson took a slow step forward. You could have lied. You could have spun some story. Why tell me the truth? Because she said barely above a whisper, I don't want to lie to you. Something shifted in the air between them, subtle electric. Jackson's hand moved almost hesitantly to brush against her arm. The truth is, he said, I've been fighting an attraction to you since we met. Not because of any pheromones or tactics, but because of the moments when you forget to be an ambassador and just be. Her breath caught. You're not supposed to say that. I'm not supposed to feel it either, he murmured. She searched his face, every line etched with conviction. If anyone finds out, they'll both want us dead, he finished for her. I know. A long silence. The kind that made the world feel smaller, more fragile. Then without another word, Nyla stepped forward and kissed him. It was not planned, it was not diplomatic, it was human. The contact sent a shock through her warmth against her cool skin, heat blooming like sunlight behind her eyes. Jackson's arms went around her, drawing her closer, deepening the kiss until logic ceased to exist. When they finally broke apart, her pulse thundered. That wasn't in any protocol I've studied, she said breathlessly. Then it's time to write a new one, he replied, his voice rough. They moved together through the quiet halls of the compound, hands brushing, neither speaking. When the door to Jackson's quarters slid open, Nyla hesitated only for a moment before stepping inside. The air between them was thick with unspoken need and fear. The line between duty and desire had already dissolved. There was only this two people who shouldn't have found each other, now unable to turn away. Jackson reached out, fingertips tracing the edge of her jaw. You don't have to stay, he said. I know. She met his gaze steadily, but I want to. What followed was not the clinical union Astrian science might have predicted. It was chaotic, imperfect, real. Their differences, the warmth of his skin, the cool luminescence of hers became harmony instead of contrast. For Nyla, who had spent her life performing emotion without feeling it, the experience was overwhelming. Every touch stripped away the layers of training, every whispered word rewrote what she thought she knew about connection. When it was over, she lay beside him, tracing circles on his chest, marveling at the rhythm of his heart. You humans, she whispered, so fragile, so fearless. He smiled faintly, fingers brushing her hair. You say that like we're opposites. Maybe we are. She paused. Or maybe opposites were meant to meet. They fell into silence, the kind that did not need to be filled. Outside, the city glowed beneath the stars. Inside, the universe had narrowed to two heartbeats, sharing one rhythm. Hours later, as Jackson slept beside her, Nyla sat awake. Her mind was a storm. She'd broken every protocol, betrayed the council, compromised her mission, risked her life. And yet, she didn't regret it. She placed a hand over her abdomen where warmth still lingered from his touch. The Austrian medical team had sworn conception was impossible, but as she closed her eyes, she felt something faint, an echo deep within her body, a spark she couldn't name. Ridiculous, she told herself, impossible. But still, that warmth remained steady and alive. She rose quietly, crossing to the window. Below the Pacific shimmered under the moonlight. The reflection of her violet skin against the glass looked softer now, less alien. You were sent to manipulate him, she whispered to her reflection, and instead you let him change you. The truth hurt, but it also freed her. Behind her, Jackson stirred. You're awake, he murmured. Couldn't sleep. He sat up, the dim light outlining the strength of his shoulders. Second thoughts. She shook her head slowly. Just first ones, real ones. He smiled, weary but sincere. Then maybe that's a good sign. She returned to the bed, resting her forehead against his. If they find out, then we face it together, he said simply. And for the first time since leaving Astria, Neela believed someone. When dawn broke over the compound painting, the sky in fire and gold, Nyla Ricks knew her mission had changed forever. The council wanted control. The humans sought peace. But what she had found unexpected, dangerous, undeniable, was truth. And somewhere deep inside her, that impossible spark of life continued to grow. 2 weeks later, the early morning light of Earth felt heavier than before. Nyla sat alone in her quarters, staring at the shimmering diplomatic reports scrolling across her tablet. Words and numbers blurred into meaningless code. Her body had begun to betray her. Dizziness, fatigue, unusual sensitivity to light and smell. Astrian physiology was efficient, almost mechanical, but now her systems were in disarray. She pressed her fingertips to her temples, exhaling sharply. It must be stress. That was the logical explanation. And yet, somewhere in the quiet between thoughts, an impossible possibility lingered. The console chimed. Ambassador Ricks said her assistant, Kel, stepping in with visible unease. His pale lilac skin was several shades lighter than usual. You've received a priority transmission from the High Council. Her pulse quickened. Display it. Elder Kraft's holographic form flickered into view, his expression severe. Ambassador, our patience wears thin. Your progress reports remain vague, lacking concrete results. Has Commander Reed been influenced or not? Nyla kept her expression neutral. Relations are improving. Trust takes time. You have had time, Kraft interrupted sharply. Our sensors already detect human survey ships near the Proxima deposits. If you will not redirect their expansion, we will send an enforcement unit to assist your mission. The words chilled her. Enforcement units were not diplomats. They were executioners dressed in protocol. When she asked quietly, the vessel Vigilant departs within 72 hours. Cooperate, Ambassador, or be recalled for reassignment. The hologram dissolved, leaving the air colder than before. Kel looked stricken. Ambassador recall means, I know, Nyla said. Her voice was calm, but her heartbeat thundered. Dismissed Kel. When he left, she stood before the mirror. Her reflection looked the same. The flawless violet skin, the diplomatic poise, yet something beneath the surface had changed. She placed a hand against her abdomen, and again that faint warmth pulsed under her touch. She whispered to the mirror, no, it's impossible. But the word impossible had begun to lose its meaning since she met a human. That evening, Jackson called. His holographic image appeared beside her desk, the edges glowing blue in the dim light. Dinner tonight, he asked, smiling the smile that made her chest tighten. Yes, she said, hesitating, but there's something we need to talk about. His smile faded. That sounds ominous. It is. They agreed to meet in his quarters at 1900 hours. When she arrived, the scent of cooked food greeted her warm, savory, unlike anything Astrian. Jackson had prepared a simple meal, 2 glasses of wine waiting. You look pale, he said, concern creasing his brow. Are you unwell? Nyla sat down slowly. Jackson, something's happening to me. I thought it was stress or atmospheric imbalance, but the symptoms are progressing. He leaned forward. Symptoms. Fatigue, nausea, increased sensory perception. He frowned. You should see a doctor. I did. Her voice trembled. At your medical facility. Jackson's expression changed, focus sharpening like a soldier preparing for impact. What did they find? Nyla drew a shaky breath. I'm pregnant. For a moment, time stopped. The only sound was the faint hum of the ventilation system. Pregnant, he repeated as if testing the word against reality. That's, that's not possible. The immunizations were wrong, she said quietly. Your biology is more adaptive than they expected. Somehow it happened. He stood slowly, his hands running through his hair. My God. I didn't plan this, she said, voice breaking. The council will see it as a catastrophe. They'll terminate me before they allow a hybrid to exist. Jackson turned to her, eyes blazing with resolve. Then we won't let them. She blinked. You don't understand. I understand perfectly. He came closer, his voice steady and fierce. We created life. You think I'd let anyone treat that as a political problem? Her throat tightened, tears burning her eyes. Astrians didn't cry. It was considered a lack of control. But humanity had a way of rewriting rules. Jackson, she whispered, you don't know what you're promising. Yes, I do. He crouched before her, his hand resting gently over hers, over the faint pulse of life beneath her skin. You said your people value control. Mine value defiance. Let's meet halfway. A breathless laugh escaped her. You're insane. Probably, but we'll face this together. She looked at him, then truly looked, and saw not a soldier or a symbol, but a man who would burn the world before surrendering those he loved. For the first time, she believed him. The next day, they began planning. Jackson arranged a private meeting with Earth's diplomatic leadership Secretary General, Carol Admiral Harrington, Dr. Elena Reyes, and liaison Diane Foster. They gathered in a secure conference room beneath the Pacific hub. Nyla stood beside Jackson, her composure perfect, despite the storm inside her. The others regarded her with wary curiosity. Let me get this straight, Admiral Harrington said, rubbing his temples. Our chief liaison and the Astrian ambassador are expecting a child. A child your medical division says shouldn't even be biologically possible. And your plan is to announce it. Not as leverage, Jackson said firmly. As proof. Proof that our species can coexist, can create together. Admiral Secretary General Carroll interjected. Calm but sharp symbolism doesn't stop invasions. It can change perception, Nyla said, her voice cutting through the room. The Astrian public reveres scientific progress. A viable hybrid child would force them to reconsider their policies. They'll have to choose between fear and evolution. Dr. Reyes nodded. Medically speaking, the pregnancy appears stable. Early tests suggest hybridization at a cellular level, full compatibility. Harrington exhaled. So this child could unify two civilizations, or ignite a war. Which is why we have to control the narrative, Jackson said. The enforcement vessel Vigilant arrives in 2 days. If they extract her, that child becomes a specimen. And if they fail to extract her, Carol asked. Then Earth demonstrates another of its strengths, Jackson replied grimly. We protect those who seek refuge here. The room fell silent. Finally, Carol spoke. Prepare your presentation, Commander Reed. Tomorrow you will address the Interstellar Council. Let's see if your miracle can outshine their fear. That night, as they prepared their proposal, Nyla stood by the window watching the sunset over the ocean. They'll never accept it easily, she said. The council will fight. They'll call it contamination. Then we give them something they can't dismiss. Jackson replied. He moved behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. We give them hope. She leaned back into him, feeling his heartbeat steady against her spine. You make it sound simple. It isn't, he admitted, but it's worth it. She turned to face him, eyes glistening in the fading light. I used to believe obedience was my greatest virtue, but now I think it's courage. And you've got plenty of that, he said softly. Enough for both of us. They stood together as the last rays of daylight faded the city lights, flickering to life below. Above them, somewhere beyond sight, the Vigilant streaked toward Earth, carrying with it the judgment of a species unprepared for what she carried inside her. At dawn, the alarm klaxons blared through the compound. The security AI's voice echoed through the halls. Unidentified vessel entering upper atmosphere. Trajectory Pacific Hub. Estimated arrival 20 minutes. The Vigilant Nyla whispered. Jackson's military instincts kicked in immediately. Get your things. We're moving to the council hall. Public space, maximum visibility. You plan to face them. Exactly. If they come for you, they'll have to do it in front of every major power in the galaxy. She hesitated. They'll brand me a traitor. Then be one, he said fiercely. for the right reasons. Nyla looked at him, the man she had once been sent to deceive, and saw something incandescent in his eyes. A belief stronger than fear. Very well, she said, at voice steady now. Let's change the galaxy. Together they walked out into the sunlight, side by side, as the shadow of the Astrian Vigilant burned its way across the morning sky. The Interstellar Council chamber thrummed with tension. Representatives from half a dozen civilizations filled the ascending tiers. Regalians of liquid crystal, Proxians of mist and light, the stoic Telidians cloaked in shadow. And in the center of it all, standing beneath the massive holographic crest of Earth, were Ambassador Nyla Rix and Commander Jackson Reed. The air shimmered as the Astrian Council's holograms materialized above the dais, 7 towering figures in dark robes. Elder Kraft's cold gaze fixed on her instantly. Ambassador Rix, he said, his voice echoing through the chamber, you were ordered to report directly to the Vigilant upon its arrival, yet here you stand addressing this assembly without authorization. With respect, Elder Nyla said calmly, her violet skin glowing faintly under the lights. Authorization has become irrelevant. What I must share concerns not only Astria or Earth, but the future of both our peoples. Kraft's expression hardened. You have violated diplomatic protocol, abandoned your mission parameters, and compromised your objectivity. Jackson stepped forward before she could reply. If by compromised you mean she chose honesty over manipulation, then yes, guilty as charged. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Kraft's holographic face turned toward him. And you human have the arrogance to interfere in Astrian affairs. Jackson didn't flinch. You made our survival your affair the moment you sent someone to manipulate our government. A flicker of outrage passed across the elder's features, but before he could respond, the chamber doors opened. 4 Astrian enforcement officers entered tall, cold, their black armor gleaming. They took position at the rear of the room, silent and watchful. The Vigilant had arrived, and with it came judgment. Secretary General Carroll rose from her seat. Esteemed members of the council, she began, we convene today not merely to discuss a territorial dispute, but an event without precedent. She gestured toward Nyla. Ambassador Rix, if you would. Nyla took a step forward. Her heart hammered, but her voice was steady. 2 months ago, I arrived on Earth as an emissary of the Astrian Confederation, tasked with redirecting human expansion through diplomacy, or if necessary, deception. Gasps and whispers rippled through the audience. She continued, but what I found here was not recklessness or aggression. I found authenticity, compassion, the capacity to see beyond species and agenda. She looked at Jackson. I found humanity. Kraft sneered. A poetic speech will not undo treason. I'm not asking for forgiveness, she said. I'm showing you what your fear has blinded you to. She raised her wrist communicator and activated a projection. A medical hologram appeared, Dr. Elena Reyes's recorded scans showing the cellular merging of Astrian and human DNA pulsing like a tiny star. Gasps filled the chamber. This, Nyla said softly, is proof that our species are not incompatible, that we are capable of more than competition. This is my child, our child. For a heartbeat, no one spoke. Then chaos erupted. Voices shouted in disbelief, others in awe. Elder Kraft's fury radiated like static. This is abomination, he spat. Unauthorized genetic experimentation. Scientific evolution, countered another voice. It was Elder Vorex, the youngest of the council. His hologram stepped forward, calm but resolute. With respect, Elder Kraft, this hybrid represents the most significant xenobiological discovery in our history. Kraft glared. You overstep your station. And you overstep your fear, Vorex replied. You see a threat where there is promise. Vorex turned to Nyla. Ambassador Rix, what are you proposing? A new framework, she said clearly. Joint mining initiatives in the disputed zones. Shared scientific research. Cultural exchange. Recognition of hybrid life as a bridge, not a violation. Jackson added, we're not asking for permission. We're offering partnership. The words hung in the air like a spark waiting for ignition. One of the enforcement officers stepped forward. Elder Kraft, he said formally, my team has assessed the situation. Forcible extraction of the ambassador would trigger conflict with Earth Defense Command. Recommend reconsideration. You dare, Kraft began. The officer's tone didn't waver. Our duty is to prevent escalation, not incite it. Jackson met Nyla's eyes, and for the first time since entering the chamber, she allowed herself to hope. Krath turned to the other council members. The majority will not endorse this madness. But Vorex had already anticipated him. The Science Academy has been informed, he said smoothly. Public announcement protocols are in motion. News of the hybrid pregnancy has already reached Astria. Krath froze. What have you done? I gave our people truth, Vorex said simply, and they are fascinated. The elder's fury twisted his features. You've doomed us. No, Vorex replied, voice quiet but certain. We've been stagnant for centuries. This child may be the catalyst we've needed. The chamber's noise swelled again. Arguments, translation, echoes the flicker of holograms. Finally, Secretary General Carroll's gavel struck the table. Enough, she said. The United Earth government is prepared to sign an immediate accord under the proposed terms contingent on Astrian cooperation. She looked at the elders. Will you join us or stand alone in history's shadow? For several long seconds, the Astrian holograms remained motionless. Then Krath's image dimmed, retreating. This council will accept the terms, Vorex interrupted, stepping fully into focus. Pending formal ratification. And just like that, the impossible happened. The tension broke. Delegates rose from their seats, murmuring about the dawn of a new era. Reporters rushed to relay the news across the galaxy. Nyla exhaled, trembling. Jackson reached for her hand beneath the table, squeezing gently. It's done, he murmured. We made history. She shook her head softly. No, Jackson, we made a future. Later, after the signing ceremony, the enforcement officer, Commander Trell, approached them. Ambassador, Commander. He gave a crisp salute. Elder Vorex has assigned my unit as your protective detail until further notice. Not all Astrians will accept this development. Jackson arched a brow. You're guarding us? Protecting the symbol you've created, Trell said, and the child who carries it. He paused. For what it's worth, Ambassador, I hope your son inherits your courage. Then he was gone. Nyla stood for a moment in stunned silence. He said, son. Jackson's grin spread slowly. Guess that's one less mystery. She laughed, a sound that felt like light itself, and leaned into him. 6 months later, the Astrian capital had changed. Where once the corridors gleamed sterile and silent, now displays of human art adorned the hallways. A joint delegation of scientists from both worlds moved through the chambers, exchanging ideas like sparks in a dark room. And in the center of the High Council chamber stood Ambassador Nyla Rix-Reed, her violet skin radiant, her belly rounded beneath a silver gown. Beside her stood Commander Jackson Reed, proud in his Earth uniform. Elder Vorex, now the senior member of the council after Krath's resignation, addressed the assembly. Ambassador Rix-Reed, he said, smiling faintly, the Confederation commends your continued efforts. The Joint Mining Initiative has already exceeded projections, and our scientists report significant breakthroughs in hybrid genetic research. Thank you, Elder Nyla said, inclining her head. And the child, Vorex asked gently. Jackson's hand rested on her back. Healthy, he said with pride, and strong. According to Dr. Reyes, he kicks like a Marine. Laughter rippled through the chamber, a sound once unheard of in Astrian politics. Vorex nodded. Perhaps that is the greatest progress of all. You've taught us to laugh again. When the session ended, Nyla lingered by the window, gazing out at the twin suns over the gleaming city. The light cast dual shadows across the floor, one Astrian, one human. Second thoughts, Jackson asked quietly, joining her. She smiled, taking his hand and placing it where their unborn son moved restlessly. No, just appreciation. I used to think duty defined me, but now it's this. He looked down, eyes soft. When they sent you here, they wanted control. Instead, they got connection. She laughed softly. And you were supposed to be manipulated. Instead, I got married to an alien ambassador. History has a sense of humor, she said. He leaned down, pressing a kiss to her temple. And so do you. Together, they turned toward the transport, waiting to return them to Earth. As they walked down the corridor, Nyla glanced back one last time at the council chamber that had once judged her. Now it was a place of beginnings. She whispered to herself, I was sent to charm a human and ended up falling in love with humanity. Outside, the shuttle's engines roared to life. The twin suns gleamed on its silver hull as it lifted into the sky, carrying them toward a future neither species had dared to imagine. Epilogue. Years later, in a classroom overlooking the Pacific, a child with violet-tinted skin and piercing blue eyes asked his teacher, "Is it true my mother and father changed the stars?" The teacher smiled. "They didn't change the stars, child. They taught the stars to shine together."